Welcome to Spicer & Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, one of the biggest questions that has come up this week is whether Republicans can pull up stakes in North Carolina and move the convention from Charlotte to another location. The president says he's interested in exploring that possibility.
Yeah, that all being said, it may be easier said than done. Setting up a huge event like a convention takes a lot of planning and a lot of time. In a moment, we're going to hear from the RNC's co-chair to talk about what kind of options the party actually does have. And let's be honest, it is a sad day in America as riots broke out in Minneapolis, on a lot of cities throughout the country, too. A black man killed, some say murdered, by a white police officer, and it was all captured on video. We're going to have a talk about race relations in American politics, but let's get going first with what's going on in the Republican convention. The Republican National Committee is scheduled to host its convention in Charlotte in August, and some 50,000 people from around the globe are expected to attend. That was all before COVID-19 hit. Well, now things have changed, and North Carolina's Democratic Governor, Roy Cooper, has questioned whether it's possible to hold such large gatherings and asked the RNC to put a plan together, citing all of the social distancing restrictions. The president, though, as he does, isn't sitting by and letting it go. He has threatened to pull the convention out of North Carolina unless, quote, they, that's the RNC, are given an answer by the governor as to whether or not the space will be allowed to be fully occupied. Now, wasting no time, several Republican officials are pitching their states, including Florida, Georgia, and Texas, as an alternative convention site. But clearly that would pose a logistical challenge. So joining us now is the co-chair of the Republican National Committee, Tommy Hicks. Tommy, welcome.
Hey, Sean. How are you?
Now, I know that you are a proud Texan, so I'm sure that in some weird way you wouldn't mind this thing ending up in Texas. But when a convention occurs in any organization, especially like this, there's a call that gets put out, right? And the call of the Republican Party that was put out over a year ago is very specific. It says the convention has to happen start on August 24th between morning and 9 o'clock at night, and it's to take place in Charlotte. So from a party standpoint, how much flexibility do you guys have when it comes to leveraging what you want and need from the governor?
Yeah, so we're operating full steam ahead right now, like it will be in Charlotte. It should be in Charlotte. The governor needs to let it happen. And it's important for the people of Charlotte, the small business owners, the hotels, the restaurant employees. I think it's going to be a great thing. It's going to be a great time to celebrate the accomplishments of the American people under this great president's leadership. But the president's doing the right thing. He's got to make sure that we can gather.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? I get it. You don't want to have a convention that the delegates and people can't come to. Another issue that's come up regarding the convention is the platform, right? I've worked on two of them. They are, literally sometimes 50 plus pages talking about every stance the party has. There's talk about paring that down. What is the truth about where the platform stands?
Which is like 53 pages. And I know there have been conversations about simplifying it. The party's going through a transition right now under this great president's leadership. And it's refreshing to see people thinking about new things. We're the party of liberty and prosperity for the American people. And I think we need to make sure we use this convention as an opportunity to make sure the American people know exactly what the Republican Party stands for. And our arms are open. We want to welcome as many new people as possible into our party. And you're seeing it happen every single day under this president.
Tommy, traditionally, since the 1980s, there have been debates put on by the Presidential Commission on Debates. It's always had some kind of journalist as a moderator. Considering how aggressive, biased most of these journalists have become, is there concern, do you think, from the party perspective, that it's going to be difficult to find a journalist to moderate one of these things that's so-called neutral? Or are you going to have to look outside of that realm and maybe get someone? I know in the past they've talked about retired judges and others that are going to be a little bit more neutral and less aggressive towards the president.
That's a great question. I mean, at least they're consistent, right? I mean, they've been like that for I've been alive since 1977. I think every single debate has been moderated by a card-carrying liberal who disguises themselves as part of the mainstream media. And it's only gotten worse. And they've been against this president from day one. And, thank God the president's able to speak directly to the people. And he does it all the time on Twitter, by having the press conferences. And he's so engaging with the American people. But I think debates would be great to watch. President Trump will absolutely destroy Joe Biden in a debate.
That's a good point, though. These debates are going to be important because it'll be the first time that anyone sees Trump and Biden on the same stage interacting and giving people a choice. The concern that I have is with all of this early voting that's happening, that's being pushed out, mail-in votes real early, that people may have cast their ballot before we even see the first debate.
Oh, absolutely. And they need to see a debate or two to make sure that they can compare and contrast the president and Joe Biden, who, has a hard time communicating with a teleprompter. But, there's a big difference between the two. It's freedom versus socialism. And this president and his policies created the biggest economy we've ever had in the history of the world. He is the right man to rebuild it. And people need to see them debate this specifically on the stage before they cast their ballot.
That's right. All right. Well, Tommy, thanks. Good luck with getting this convention. We hope to see you in Charlotte. Be safe until then.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. Our next guest is considered a beacon of conservative values in one of the country's most liberal areas. That's San Francisco. She is challenging California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom's power grab, suing him on his restrictive policies and fighting for the legal rights of small business owners and churches. She's also championing the cause of the general public to be able to get out during this whole pandemic. Well, how effective has she been? One of her lawsuits challenging the shutdowns has now reached the Supreme Court of the United States. Attorney Harmeet Dhillon joins us now. Harmeet, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sean. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. Let me ask you this. You've been on the forefront of this effort to keep churches open and allow people to practice their faith during this pandemic in California. Where are we in terms of people being able to do that in California?
Well, Sean, we filed 3 different federal civil rights lawsuits in California and 2 in other states. And I'm happy to say that I believe as a result of our litigation, the governor moved up the schedule for opening the churches by several months to earlier this week. Now, he's still limiting churches to only 25% capacity or 100 people, but that's obviously better than not being able to worship at all. And so we're going to continue to fight to make sure that we have total open access to our churches, including some mega churches in Southern California that have several thousand people capacity. So there's no reason to limit them to 100 people.
Harmeet, one of the other battles that you've been on the forefront is this battle against big tech and these platforms that are biased against conservatives. Tell me, what do you think of what the president did today to try to get them taken out of Section 230 of the code, treat them more as publishers, less as platforms now that they want to edit so much?
Well, I think we're still waiting to see that final language from the White House, but there are some limitations in what the president can do. Overall, I definitely support the analysis of trying to limit the definition of otherwise objectionable, which is language in 230 that has been abused by these big tech companies, and really hold them to the strict language of that statute, which was meant to only protect them when they took down speech that was defamatory, pornography, or violent or harassing. They've gone well beyond that to the point of censoring people's speech, and that's not what was intended. And so hopefully through the FTC and FCC, we can have some rules that help define that more clearly.
Does it concern you leading up to this election that right now, I mean, one of the first things that they did was label President Donald Trump, not China, not some outrageous thing on Twitter. They went after the president of the United States. Are you concerned that these big tech platforms are trying to censor the president of the United States as we get into this election cycle?
Well, it's a combination of censorship and also really a in-kind contribution, in my opinion, to his opponent, Joe Biden. And it's no accident that Kara Swisher, who is one of the big opponents of the president and a tech reporter and publisher, urged Twitter to do this, and they went ahead and did just this. So they're kind of caught between their liberal friends and really their audience, because if the president goes away and decides he doesn't want to play there anymore, I think that's a blow to Twitter and a blow to its stock value. But ultimately, I don't think we can trust these guys to do what's right. They're clearly making in-kind contributions to Joe Biden. And in fact, if I were the president, I would urge the FCC to look at that issue.
Yeah, well, thank you. We are going to spend all next week talking about this, Harmeet, and I appreciate all of your efforts to make sure that we're pushing back against this bias. So thank you for being here, and thanks for what you're doing out there in California.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sean.
You bet. All right, we're going to have more on the president's executive order and the fight against social media with our company later in the show. But first, troubling scenes out of Minneapolis where violent protests have taken over the city streets after a black man died in the custody of police. Is there any hope for things to calm down, or will they get worse? We're going to talk about this next.
If you're retired,